Hello and welcome to HAZMAT, the only show that watched Paul Blart Mall Cop 10 times all year. That's all we watched.
Yeah, it didn't seem right to watch anything else,
I'm Matt,
And I'm Harry.
and today we're going to be ranking our top 10 films of the year. So we've both compiled our own personal top 10s of the year, our favourite films that came out in 2023. It's going to work like our other ranking videos. We're going to go back and forward from lowest to highest. And we should stress that we're using UK release date because some of them are like
Some
released
of
in
them,
festivals
technically
overseas
were
and stuff like that.
2022 movies, but they had either streaming or theatrical releases here in 2023.
So we're going UK release date and all these. So all of these are 2023 movies to us.
If we start off with the one film we kind of picked, as it didn't quite make the list, we'll do our honorable mentions.
We can do honorable mentions first if you want.
There were a bunch of things I wanted to talk about that I really liked, but just didn't quite hit that level. So for me, the honorable mention goes to a film I watched recently that you've seen a couple of times this year, Theatre Camp, which just struck a lot of chords in terms of being quite a niche subject matter. As someone who studied drama in like GCSE level, a lot of the jokes land really well. It's a great comedy. It's filmed in like a sort of a mockumentary kind of style.
Yeah.
There's a lot of names from musical theatre in there. Obviously you've got Ben Platt in one of the lead roles.
Yeah.
I can never remember the actor's name, the one from American Vandal.
Jimmy Tatro,
who I loved in American Vandal and
American
is
Vandal's
also
brilliant.
really good in this.
Yeah, he's really good at doing that specific character.
That very kind of very modern
kind of like bro like
very like Shaka
he's
Bra
really
kind of. As much as I love that movie, it just doesn't quite hit the same as some of the other, because there's some on my list that are really low down and people will be contestable over. But for me, Theatre Camp is one, because I really wanted to put John Wick 4 there, but then I thought to myself, the thing about John Wick is that it's very, very difficult to get that wrong.
Yeah.
It's the formula of it's literally just action all the way through.
Yeah. My honorable mention goes to Fremont. It's a great film. It's all in black and white. It's about this immigrant from Afghanistan, and she works in a fortune cookie factory, and her life's kind of going nowhere, and that's sort of reflected in like the somber mood and the black and white visuals until she meets this guy played by Jeremy Allen White. You know, her day-to-day life is so mundane, and then suddenly this like thing happens and like everything changes, and the cameras are so static and the shots are so still a lot of the time, and then as soon as this character's introduced, the cameras are a lot more free-flowing, which is just like something I noticed in the film. And it's just about, I don't know, I guess just finding those people that make life worth living even though like we all have to go through the daily grind of like jobs and all that stuff, and just finding like those people in your life when you feel alone, I guess. I didn't mean that to get so deep. But that's what it was about to me anyway.
Yeah, like that's always been the kind of movie I think you've referred is the very human level aspect where the story is based around the actual characters and their lives and relationships rather than just some kind of big far-fetched adventure tale.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess we'll get into the list proper.
The list proper, starting at number 10, which immediately for me I think is pretty controversial and people won't be happy with how low down it is.
Oh, okay.
I gave it a pretty good rating when we did the review, but number 10 for me is Oppenheimer, because there's another similar movie on my list a bit higher up in that it's based on a true story or real life events that I enjoyed a bit more. For me, Oppenheimer, while I think it's got a really good ensemble cast, everyone does a great performance, it's just a little bit too by the numbers, I think. That it gets too bogged down in trying to recount everything in detail and follow strictly the facts. It's when I think about these kind of movies, the comparison I make is between the two biopics of Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man. In that Bohemian Rhapsody was just kind of a very straight retelling of events, whereas Rocket Man was a lot more fantastical, had these big musical sequences. I think that's what I prefer. Is a lot of people will enjoy sort of the more straightforward retelling because they love like the attention to detail and how things are recreated shot for shot, but I just, as personal preference, I like the creative input and changing it into something a little different. So I still really liked Oppenheimer, but for me, I think I couldn't get it much higher than a 10.
Right. Yeah, fair. Well, I can reveal that my number 10 on my list is Oppenheimer.
So not as controversial as I
It's
thought.
not as controversial as you thought. Yeah, similar for me. I really enjoyed it while we were watching it. It's such a cinema film. It's such an experience of a film. And it's so fast-paced all the way through until the big bomb sequence, and that's so silent and slow. And that's something I really loved about it, that like contrast that Nolan was able to pull off there. Yeah, the ensemble cast are brilliant. It was fun to almost like, I wasn't expecting it to be such a like cameo fest. I don't know if that's the wrong term for it, but I think we talked about in our review, like some of these
Big
characters
names that just kind of pop up,
that
yeah.
were real people, but introduced as in the same way that like superheroes are introduced.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
dun, 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 and it's like, you know, some big name. They're in it for like, you know, maybe like 5 minutes screen time total.
Yeah, have like a few lines and then they're gone.
Yeah, but they all managed to make like such a good impact and move this story along. Cillian Murphy's just a great actor.
He's fantastic in
every
everything he's
way.
been in.
Yeah, it's a film I really enjoyed watching it at the time while we were watching it, and I think I will watch it again at some point. It's a beefy film that
Yeah.
you've got to be like ready for.
I think you summed it up perfectly calling it a cinema film in that
Yeah.
you appreciate it so much more on the big screen than you would just watching it at
Yeah, I
home.
don't know if it would have the same impact in a living room on a phone. I saw someone uploaded it to Twitter recently.
Yeah.
Just the whole thing.
It's out there on your tablet with Oppenheimer.
Yeah. I'm sure that's how Christopher Nolan wanted it to be. We should stress we haven't seen each other's top 10 lists here, so this is all, you know, new to each other as well.
Speaking of new to each other, my number 9, a film I only watched recently and was so good that like it instantly jumped onto the top 10 list.
Yeah.
So number 9 for me, a little horror movie called Skinamarink, which was super reminiscent of this whole big analog horror trend that's come about in recent years, in that the way it's chosen to be filmed, they use like older style cameras, so everything's got this big fuzzy film grain on it the whole time. Even like the mics seem older, so like the sound quality is quite tinny and grainy.
Nice.
It's one of those things, I'd say it's like a Marmite movie. There is no middle ground with Skinamarink. You're either gonna love it, you're gonna love the idea and the vision that went into it, or you're gonna think it's the most boring like piece of shit that you've ever seen.
Yeah.
For me, it was just such an interesting take in that normally horror movies have a very specific kind of setup, in that, you know, there's this slow panning around in silence and setting up to big scares. You can kind of tell when things are going to go because they focus in on things. But Skinamarink is so static in its appearance. It almost comes across like a slideshow at times because there's just long lingering shots of rooms in a house. The whole thing is filmed in one house. All of the effects they do, they show like the windows and the doors disappearing. They show stuff disappearing, but it's literally just cut. It's like, here's a shot of the door, cut, it's gone.
That's cool.
Like a stop motion kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where story-wise, on a surface level, yes, it is just about some kind of demon creature attacking these children. But there's so many ways you can interpret it thematically. It's about how we repress our past and like traumatic events, big changes in our lives, stuff like parents getting divorced, about childhood abuse, neglect. It's got all these kind of themes, and it's just portrayed in such a surreal, abstract kind of way. I think that's what I really liked about it.
Yeah.
It's one of those films where people will struggle to sit through it because of the lack of action, the lack of activity. But once you start thinking about it from, I suppose, more of like a writer's perspective, when you start thinking about themes and the way they're presented throughout the film, it becomes just such a strong movie.
Yeah, you got to look past the surface. That sounds cool. Sounds like it plays with the form of horror, which is something I always like out of a film, is when they break the rules.
Yes, it's not just like a jump scare fest. It's everything's much more psychological and bizarre and surreal. Yeah, I think Skinamarink strong number 9 for me.
Nice. Skinamarink.
Skinamarink.
My number 9 is a film called Fingernails. I usually don't really like when people see kind of a ground level sci-fi film, you know, it's set kind of in the real world, but there's some technology we don't have yet or whatever, and just immediately go, oh, it's like Black Mirror. But all I was thinking in this film is, this is a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
This is about a world in which there's a test where you can find out if your partner is your soulmate. And how it works is they have to take a fingernail off your finger and they put it in this like machine. It centers on this couple. Weirdly, Jeremy Allen White is also in this one. I've been a big Jeremy Allen White fan this year. She's not feeling it as much as he is. They've been together for like years. She starts falling in love with someone she's working with, and she works in the facility where they do these tests. It's Black Mirror in the sense that it's a dark twist on a potential technology, and the technology is so simple, but it's also like the kind of thing that it's kind of out of reach of us. Like, how would that ever work, like in real life? As I was watching it, weirdly, I'm quite into like the Greek weird wave cinema, you know, the Yorgos Lanthimos films and stuff. And as I was going through this film, I was like, this kind of has the vibe of one of those Greek films. Turns out the director is Greek. I just got the vibe from it.
God, there's just something very Greek about this film. I don't know what it is.
Well, it specifically like from the weird wave Greek movement, you know, like The Lobster, and it has that vibe. Everything is a bit awkward and a bit wooden and strange, and you don't quite know why. And it was just a really interesting film. The ending is like crazy. And the ending also fits in a Black Mirror episode. Like, with just that, like, I was literally like on my feet almost. I was like, oh no.
Oh, number 8.
Number ocho.
Number whatever that is in German or French.
Couldn't tell you. I could do up to 3 in most languages.
Yeah. Number 8 for me, interestingly, in a year where there was a pretty big L for Netflix. This is their big dub for me. Number 8, I went for Nimona, which is an animated film, because, you know, I love my animated films. This had a super interesting setting to it. I might have mentioned it to you before, in that it's set in a very sci-fi setting, in that they have like flying cars and laser swords and everything.
Classic.
But aesthetically, it's very medieval.
Oh, you have
They have knights and it's a kingdom, and they're still fearful of like monsters in the outside world. And Nimona, the title character, is this girl who's kind of like an outcast. She's ostracized because she's a shapeshifter, and so she's seen by a lot of people as one of these strange monsters. It's very common, I think, in animated films. The theme of anything different is immediately vilified and seen as evil. But this was just a fun movie about cyber knights fighting against a system that was inherently wrong. And what it does nicely as well is, I think it just has gay representation in it that isn't super on the nose or forced, in that the main character that you follow is just this knight who is in a relationship with another knight.
Yeah, but it's not the main thing about
it's just a detail, because it was based on a book. It's just a detail that carried over. And everything about this movie was really fun. The soundtrack's great. Aesthetically, it's beautiful. It has that almost comic book-esque kind of art style that movies like Spider-Verse and the Telltale games have popularized in recent years. So yeah, just really, really nice to look at, and great movie to watch.
Yeah, and you want that from an animated film. You want it to at least be nice to look at.
It's the one thing I asked for, is it? I
just
want it to be nice and pretty. I want it to be like watching a painting.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great description of animated films, actually. My number 8, or ocho, as you may say, and other languages, is Barbie. Obviously so paired with Oppenheimer, culturally. And I think it will be forever. But I remember just simply enjoying it more. It's a much more fun movie. It's obviously a very different vibe to Oppenheimer, which is like why the whole thing happened. They just got it right. I sort of couldn't really imagine what a Barbie film was going to be. And especially when it started talking about, oh, she is the toy, but she goes into the real world. It is like sometimes that concept is like maybe a bit overdone, like some stuff going into the real world and things like that. But it just really hits the nail on the head. Is that the right phrase? It just does that concept so well. Greta Gerwig is a great director. That was another surprising thing as well, that she's come from this like indie background and she's made this like huge bright comedy blockbuster of the year. I think it's a film that like really brought together the worlds, you know. But like with Oppenheimer, just that whole thing is like, it was such a cultural event, which I feel like is so rare in that way, just a natural thing. It's already trying to be replicated by studios. They're already deliberately
trying to like pair releasing other films movies together.
And it's just it's never going to get that magic again. I think it was just a brilliant film. It was so lovely to look at. It was so bright. The comedy was done perfectly. The cast were all great. Just an all-round fun time.
Which drags us nicely up to number 7, or Siete.
Nice.
Keeping with the theme, something just very fun and goofy, and just had a blast watching it. Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, which was quite early in the year.
There was. God, that seems like ages ago.
Years ago. It was, I think it was around March time. And that can often, with these kind of things, like these end of year lists, that can play to their detriment. I think it's easier for stuff you watched earlier on to kind of slip your mind and you just kind of forget about it. But no, I really liked Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know how it did commercially. I think it was sort of middle of the road-ish. It wasn't like super successful, but
it wasn't
like
a
crash
massive
and
hit, but
burn.
everyone I've seen talk about it has talked about it in a good
Quite
way.
positively, yeah. Because a lot of the criticism I saw about it is from actual critics was mostly to do with how it's suffered from the Marvel effect. It's just all these dumb one-liners and big action scenes. And it's like, have you never played Dungeons and Dragons before? That's how almost like every Dungeons and Dragons campaign goes, because you're leaving it up to just the players to decide how their story goes, and they want things to be goofy and fun so that they're having fun.
Yeah, I think it did capture that friend group humor so well. You know, with all
Yeah,
characters bantering.
everyone involved, Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Justice Smith, everyone who was in that movie obviously had great chemistry on set. They're just able to banter back and forth, and that's what kind of carries the whole movie. The idea of that's how Dungeons and Dragons is really supposed to work. Every character is supposed to be massively different to each other because they're all individual people coming up with them, but then they come together for a singular cause and everyone just gets along. It is one of those fun action movie popcorn blockbusters, but me being like a big dumb Dungeons and Dragons geek, it hit all the right notes for me. I think they did well in that no matter what your exposure to Dungeons & Dragons is, you can be someone who's been playing it for years. Maybe you've played one or two games, maybe you never even played it at all. You can easily just jump into this movie and enjoy it.
I mean, yeah, I've played, I think, one game of proper Dungeons and Dragons in my life, and I still got a lot out of it. My number 7 is a little film called Scrapper. A scrappy little film called Scrapper.
Is it anything to do with Scooby-Doo?
Unfortunately not. Otherwise, it would have been way higher on the list. This is a really sweet film. It's about a little 12-year-old girl called Georgie. Her mum's just passed away, and she's living in this flat on this council estate on her own until her dad, who has been partying in Ibiza since she was born, he turns up. It's just a really sweet story about them like trying to figure out if they even like each other. They obviously don't know each other. It's almost told through the lens of Georgie, and it's got these almost like Scott Pilgrim-esque edits to it. There's weird little comical sort of magic realism things. There's like a bit where she's with a friend and they're talking about like the spiders in the room, and it's zooming in on all the spiders, and you're hearing like the spider's thoughts, like, oh my god, she's gonna come get us, like stuff like that. And it's just like it's little details I didn't quite expect from like such a sort of grounded storyline. And I thought it was a cool way to do it. It was as if we're sort of getting bits of her like childlike imagination through the film. It's just really sweet, and it made me tear up several times.
Leads us up to numero 6, number 6 for all our non-Spanish speaking watchers.
Yeah, just to help you out.
Just to help them out, the few that don't speak Spanish.
We're just too global for you.
I previously mentioned having another film on this list that is based on a true story, and that's Killers of the Flower Moon. Which, again, very similar vein to Oppenheimer, had a very big cast, a lot of big known names in it. Obviously a big director. It's a Martin Scorsese movie. I don't know what it was about it. I don't know if it was just the subject matter or whether it was the performances, but something about Killers of the Flower Moon clicked with me more than Oppenheimer did.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if it's just the idea of maybe Oppenheimer was too recent. Obviously being set in the 1940s, 1930s, 40s. You go a bit further back for Killers of the Flower Moon. I don't know if I just find it more interesting.
Yeah, just that sort of time period.
Because Oppenheimer's more based on sort of his moral dilemma, whereas there's more of like a mystery kind of element to Killers of the Flower Moon. There's this whole conspiracy kind of thing that's going on that you piece together, and obviously by the end you work out everybody who's involved. And exactly how it went down, because they show you throughout, they show you what's happening, but they don't give you the full details. And I think even sort of the characters involved don't really have the full details of what they're doing and how bad it is. It's very much one of those films where it makes you kind of connect with certain characters and portray them in such a warm and friendly manner, and it's like, actually no, fuck you, this is the worst guy.
Yeah.
There were just very little touches in it, certain scenes that depicted like the spiritual beliefs of like the Native American community that was a lot of it centered around. And I think maybe that's part of why I like it more than Oppenheimer. It's just there's a bit more
bit more to chew on. There's a bit
yeah,
more.
yeah. It's not so focused around just one person. It's more about an entire community and how they're all affected by everything that happens throughout.
My number 60, that's 6 for our English speakers over there, is a film called The Old Oak. This is set vaguely close to home. It's set in a town in County Durham, and it's about the Assyrian refugees that come over on a bus. It's set in 2016, I think, and it's just about how the town deal with suddenly having all these extra families, that are just around, and there's a lot of people that disagree with it, and there's people that welcome them, and it's about racial discrimination and xenophobia and all that sort of stuff. Ken Loach film, so it has that realism that he always does. It's sort of a Ken Loach feature that he brings in people that are not big name actors or necessarily even actors. Like, some of them are just people. The performances were brilliant from the cast, and it's sort of centered on this connection between this pub landlord and this photographer. They make friends with each other very early on, and it's sort of centered around them. It's a really sweet film, and it's very heartbreaking at times, but it's very hopeful, and it's just about how small communities can come together to help each other, even if they're from radically different backgrounds.
A lot of the films we've watched this year, we've enjoyed because of the message. I mean, I don't think the message should be kind of the be-all, end-all of the film and what makes it great. But when you can portray a good message and do it in a strong way that resonates with people, I think it just makes movies that much stronger.
It does, and it's, again, I teared up at certain points because it's just there's just so much emotion around these issues, and it does, it gets you going, man.
Well, we're up to the halfway point.
Halfway point of the list. We have to get funny again. Too much crying.
Oh, lovely. It's great that you said that. We have to get funny again, because my number 5, Guardians of the Galaxy,
Yay!
Volume 3. Here we go. Back into
We're back into the banter.
Just straightforward, no nonsense, fun, wacky shenanigans times. I'm trying to think of what else was released Marvel-wise this year. Obviously, we just watched the Marvels. We had Ant-Man and the Wasp earlier on. MCU-wise, I think this was their best offering this year.
This year, yeah, I agree.
I think you know what you're getting with James Gunn and the Guardians. At this point, you know that the comedy writing's going to be strong. You know that you like all the characters, that there's going to be a good story plots and development for the characters going forward, and it was nice that it was focused more on Rocket Raccoon this time around. The first two were very Peter Quill heavy. He still has a major role in this one, but the big picture kind of revolves around Rocket and his backstory, which is a nice way to kind of jump forward in that it's a heartfelt send-off to the Guardians team that we knew, because they split by the end of it, and now we have this new Guardians team in which I think it's just Rocket and Groot are the two original members that remain.
Yeah.
It works really well in terms of how James Gunn is very selective with the soundtrack and making sure everything fits together with the story he's trying to tell. Really strong villain this time around, I think. Guardians has been a bit of a mixed bag with its villains. Obviously, the first one you had Ronan, who's just kind of a throwaway, throwaway evil guy. I liked Ego in the second one, Kurt Russell. But this time around, blows him out the water. Terrifying guy.
Terrifying dude. Yeah.
Terrifying guy. I didn't watch most of the movie. I actually just pulled my shirt up over my eyes because I couldn't watch.
Yeah.
Too scared.
I didn't know you did that because I also pulled mine over my eyes.
Yeah, in fact, for the most of the movie, I couldn't tell you what happened because I had my shirt over my eyes. I was breathing heavily,
we were just trembling.
Shivering, trembling, sweating, crying, and that's exactly how a Guardians film should make you feel.
Yeah.
Is just horrified.
Oh, I mean, I heard some horrible things going on.
I don't ever want to see that film or hear from that film ever again, and that's why it's my number 5.
Yeah, I think what I like about Guardians is James Gunn is allowed to do his thing. I think a lot of MCU stuff can feel a bit corporate and identityless because it is just, a slop to just churn stuff out. But I think Guardians is special in that it's a James Gunn film and it's allowed to be what it is.
Yeah.
It's not trying to spread itself too thin. My number 5 is Killers of the Flower Moon. I agree with just about everything you said. I think a lot of people probably compared it to Oppenheimer. It's the big biopic from a huge director.
Yeah.
It's the two that happened this year in that sort of category, I guess. But again, yeah, like you say, there's a bit more to this one to chew on. It's an ensemble cast, but it feels like you get more time with each character. You get plenty of time to know the situation and to get to know this town. I just came out of it just blown away. I couldn't really speak much because it was just. I mean, it's really long, but it's like it really earns its place. Yeah, I think Leo DiCap, great as always, brilliant central performance there, and Lily Gladstone is just a great performance from a relatively new actress. I think there was some interview where she said she was literally about to give up acting and then got the call from Martin Scorsese, which is crazy. And I think this is going to propel her to like heights she never imagined. But she's up for all sorts of awards now, and deservedly so. I think just every performance in this film is pitch perfect. It's just a satisfying film to watch. Like you say, it felt so huge and so like so much to chew on and think about that I haven't even really processed it yet.
Yeah, I don't know if it's maybe because we knew a lot less about kind of the time and the
I think that's
story
maybe what it
behind
is,
what
because
it
I
is.
personally didn't know anything about that, but you know, I'm glad to have like learned about like what happened. Yeah, Oppenheimer's a bit more of a famous
It's a
name.
much famous case, yeah.
But no, it was cool to just learn. It's cool to just learn sometimes, you know. It's cool to get educated.
I think it's nice that you kind of talked a little bit about an actor who was sort of on the verge of leaving the acting game altogether and having this career resurgence, because it leads nicely into my number 4.
God, it's like we planned this.
It's like we,
I
almost
swear
like
to God, we didn't plan
almost
this.
like we planned this, but it leads nicely into my number 4, The Whale.
The whale.
And of course, I'm referring to the resurgence of one Brendan Fraser,
Mr. Fraser.
who, through no fault of his own, was almost blacklisted from Hollywood for some time, and has had this recent career resurgence. I think he won the Oscar for his performance in The Whale as well.
I think so. Also in Killers of the Flower Moon, funnily enough.
Yes, yeah. Much smaller part, but
Yeah.
it's just nice to see him.
It was just cool to see him.
It's just nice
man.
to see him around again.
He's like so like at the end as well. It was like I knew he was going to be in it. I was like, when is he showing up?
When he's gonna
There he is.
There he is. But yeah, this was kind of my big character study movie this year that I really liked. Obviously not like a biopic. It's based on a play. I think it's something really special when you can take such a confined kind of story. It all takes place just in this one apartment. It's just him, his daughter, and then like a handful of other characters. And I saw a lot of like criticism about this movie, about some people saying how it was fat phobic and it was all portrayed in a negative way, but I think that was kind of the point. In a way, I don't think it was fat phobic at all. I think it was just showing how through different tragedies that had happened throughout his life, he'd kind of lost control in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's the aspect of how reconnecting with the daughter and making sure she did well and had a good life going forward. He wanted to. It was a lot about atonement. I know there were a lot of religious references and allegories throughout, but it was kind of about atonement and how he wanted to make up for all the bad he'd done. Even though a lot of it was kind of out of his hands, he just had all of these terrible events befall him. As a character study, it's great. Brendan Fraser deserved the Oscar for it. It was fantastic.
My number 4 is Bottoms. This is a comedy from Rachel Sennett and Emma Seligman. It's about these 2 gay high schoolers who start a lesbian fight club to try and sleep with the cheerleaders. That's essentially the plot. It's just like, it's a perfect comedy, man. It's got there's kind of this generation of comedians and comedy writers coming up now that are sort of a Twitter generation, but they're now making it into like mainstream movies and stuff. So it's got that millennial / Gen Z humor, I guess. But it's just such a brilliant, like, it's very meta and it doesn't take itself seriously at all. The comedy is just so well delivered. Rachel Sennett is one of the main characters in it, and Ayo Edebiri, who I really love, is in it as well. She's sort of everywhere at the moment. She was in The Bear, and she's in another film on my list, in fact, that's coming up. And I just think, every performance in this is so great. It's the sort of classic high school story, but with a fun twist on it. Just a real fun experience.
Well, I feel bad now because my next one is definitely not a fun experience.
Oh, we're going to go back to the sadness.
Exact opposite. My number 3, again, another movie I watched within like the past week, but thought was so good. In fact, it hits number 3, Podium Finish.
Podium Finish.
This one right off the bat. It's an Argentinian horror movie.
Ooh.
Called When Evil Lurks, and this is a movie all about demonic possession, which has been done 1,000 times over in horror, especially in Western horror. There's so much that's been done like how can you possibly do anything new? But this one does. It almost treats like the whole phenomenon of demonic possession as a disease rather than some kind of, religious phenomenon. People that are possessed by demons are referred to as rotten because their flesh starts decaying, they start bloating up like corpses, and essentially they play host to the demon until someone basically kills the rotten person, and then that allows the new demon to be spawned from them. I don't think they've specifically stated that it is about COVID, but there's a lot of sort of parallels you can draw with this movie because the whole premise is you have these two brothers living on a farm. They find that there's an old woman and her son and her other son, who is a rotten, living similar kind of land to them, and they go and talk to the landowner about it. The landowner is kind of representative of people who are very much in denial about the virus. All he wants to do is go and take the person, just dump them somewhere off his land so they don't have to worry about it anymore. But it has this whole kind of thing. The two brothers who are our main characters decide to go into town after everything that's happened. They're like, this place is going to go to shit. We've got a demon possession nearby. We're going to grab our family and we're going to leave. But by going around and being in contact with other people, they're essentially spreading the possession.
Damn, yeah.
It's a very strange way they do it, in that the demonic possession works in that if you get some of the ick or the goo off of that person in contact with someone else, then they can become possessed rather than just some kind of entity. It is very much treated like a viral kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm seeing the parallels now.
I think in an interview with the actual director, he said something about it was actually more to do with actual farming and agriculture in Argentina, about how pesticides are being used and how it's affecting the quality of the crops, and the state government doesn't do anything about it.
He said it's not about COVID.
It's
Stop
not about
saying
that.
it's about
Stop
COVID.
saying it. You can interpret it how you like. That's not right.
That's not what it is, though.
No, but yeah, there is not a lot of interference or interjection by the authorities. In fact, they go to the police several times and they're like, what do you want us to do? But the way it's framed is just so good, and it's really, I don't want to go too much into the story as a whole, because I think it's something that has to be experienced really, because it's so brutal at times. The depiction of some of the violence and just the gore and everything that happens in it, it does get really brutal at times. As being so impressive as to do something completely new and refreshing with a genre that has so many entries in it at so many different levels, it deserves to be high up.
My number 3 is Past Lives. This is a beautiful film. It's about these two kids, a boy and a girl, that were growing up together in South Korea, but her family moves away to America, so they haven't spoken in years, and they sort of end up reconnecting years later. He's in college, she's working. It's like a what if story, like what could have been if they'd stayed together. And it's sort of that thing of, are they in love? Would they have been in love? She's with someone else, and eventually they meet up, and there's just beautiful lines of dialogue everywhere in this film, and it centers basically on those two. The only other character that gets any real characterization is her partner. It's a very small story, and it's just about this relationship between those two. It's just beautiful, man.
Yeah,
it's just beautiful.
It's a very small film, but the borrowers,
everyone was really small in this film.
Very, very tiny.
Tiny. I was like,
weird, very strange choice.
Who is
in
that?
fact, they didn't zoom into anyone. They just kind of filmed it from afar.
Yeah, it was really odd choice there. But hey, I liked it. No, yeah, just a really simple concept. It didn't need any bells and whistles. It didn't need any thrills. It was just about these two people's lives and how they turned out different, and what would have happened if they didn't. And that's why it's called Past Lives.
We didn't.
Well, because the beautiful thing is that there's this concept. It's called Past Lives because there's this concept in Korean that if you're meant to be together, you'll meet in every life.
Oh, and
whether
every
you're together,
version of you.
whether you're together or not, whether you're in love, whether you just pass on the street. The idea is you will always meet, and so it's about maybe we were together in past lives, maybe we'll be together again. This life didn't happen.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Bet you were thinking it wasn't going to make the list, that I wasn't going to talk about it at all, and especially that it was going to be so high up as to earn a silver medal. Because my number 2. It's Barbie, baby!
Barbie! I was getting worried.
Oh, you were thinking, you bitch, you thought?
He hates women.
Yeah, crazy. The more I thought about it, going back over everything I watched this year, how much I did really like the Barbie movie. And, coming out of it, after actually watching it and like the instant kind of thought was like, yeah, it was really good. I enjoyed it a bit more than Oppenheimer. I'd definitely watch it again. It's just a fun movie. But going back and like thinking about it more in depth, I was like, you know what? I really like the Barbie movie. Like it just had everything that you said. Like all the performances are fun and silly, bright, colorful movie. But then it's one of those few movies where I think a lot of the detractors of it got bogged down in the message it was portraying, but then didn't actually understand the message it was portraying.
Yeah.
Because the Barbie movie is not anti-men at all. It never has been. It's pro-women, for sure, but it's not like anti-men.
I think that's why people think that. They're like, oh, if it's pro-women, it must be anti-men.
No, it did. No,
That's not true at all.
No, I think something that can portray that kind of message, which I think is a super important message in, especially in like modern times. It's crazy to me that we're here in 2023 and we're still having this kind of discussion.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Like you said, the whole concept of X goes to the real world is something that's really overdone and is usually reserved for just like goofy family comedies, but it's done for a purpose. I mean, for those movies, it's normally just what would happen if this person was in the real world and experienced our culture. And it's like with Barbie, it's actually, what if they came to this world and figured out how backwards everything is?
Yeah.
And it's like the complete opposite of life that's been living it. But then at the same time, she comes to this world and realizes actually the way we've been living is quite backwards as well, just in the opposite sense. And she strikes out this kind of personal quest of self-discovery and kind of realizes that actually it's more about balance. We should be able to find like a happy middle ground where, you know, there isn't one dominant gender anymore. It shouldn't be that hard. If the Barbie movie can figure it out,
you can too. We love you, Margot Robbie. My number 2, the silver medal, goes to a film called The 8 Mountains. Like your number 3, I watched this like the other day, and it's immediately shot right up to number 2. The more I thought about it, I knew it was going to make the list when I finished it, but yeah, the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, well, I enjoyed it better than that, and that, and that, and that. It just kept working its way up. So yeah, it's one of the best films I've watched, maybe. It's a very similar concept to Past Lives. 2 people that were friends as kids, their lives have diverged, but it's not a romantic story at all. It's set in this Italian village in the Alps. These 2 boys are the only kids there, so they just, they make friends and they're playing. They don't fall out, but they lose connection and they end up not seeing each other for 15 years, and then they reconnect when Pietro, his dad, dies. And it's all about how they just kind of rekindle this like friendship, and they sort of bond over the dad has made Bruno promise he will build this house up in this remote region of the Alps, like out of the way of everything. It just goes through the years of these guys' lives, and he comes back every summer. We sort of re-see them every summer for like years as he keeps returning to the mountains, and how their lives slowly change, but they keep coming back to this like beautiful part of the world. It's like 2.5 hours, but it's slow moving but gripping because it's so like just natural, and it's not plot heavy at all. It's just about connection and like friendship.
It's just about having a nice holiday in the mountains.
It's about having a nice holiday cottage in the mountains. Yeah. I guess this house sort of becomes a metaphor for their relationship in a way. If it falls apart a little bit, they fix it. One of them fixes it, the other one comes along to help. It felt like I was in it.
Yeah.
It felt like that film that sort of draws you in, and every shot is so beautiful to look at. Like 80% of the film is set in the Alps. The other 20 is in Nepal or Turin, so it's like just beautiful landscapes like in every shot. So yeah.
And when you have like characters that are so rich and so just grounded, that you feel like it's someone you know.
That's the thing, is it because it just focuses on these 2 dudes. Again, it's the same as a lot of these films on my list. It focuses on 2 characters. There's some tertiary characters around them, but you get to know these 2 dudes so deeply and what they mean to each other. And yeah, it's about bros being dudes and dudes being guys.
I think it brings us nicely into gold medal territory.
Here we go. Number ones.
As good that you mentioned it. It's just a grounded, lovely, realistic, gripping story about 2 people being friends. Yes, there's a supporting cast around them, but it is just about 2 people being friends. And I think it's great that coming off at the back of Spider-Man 2 being snubbed at the Game Awards, that I can do right by them and put my number 1 as Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Nice.
Which I don't think it will come as a shock to you.
I wish we did like
people.
Predictions in an envelope for each other's, because I knew this would be on an award.
Absolutely. I was just talking, when I was talking about Nimona, about how animated movies should be about like watching a painting, and this really is. I think this is the finest example of just art in an animated film. I don't think anything compares to like how beautiful this movie is. It's such a unique style, and I know it's been like tried to be replicated now. It became people saw how well the first Spider-Verse did. I think I mentioned before, like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, the new Ninja Turtles movie.
Yeah.
Try and replicate this kind of style, but I don't think anyone's done it to the effect of this. And I think being a comic book movie helps it a lot because they get to play around with the framing and the transitions between scenes. Like you said, the whole style of having text boxes and speech bubbles and even like the panel frames showing up, it just adds so much. The fact that you can have that and then have two almost like split screen simultaneous scenes going on at the same time in different frames, but it's still like a whole image.
Yeah.
Not many movies kind of do that to a effect I think is good, whereas this, it is one of those ones where just the art style adds so much, and it doesn't take away from just the story and the characters. Even like the newer characters were introduced in this one are instantly so likable and become part of the gang almost immediately, because we get characters from a little tease at the end where characters from the first one kind of come back, and we're going to do this big, I assume what's going to be a big grand finale in the third one. If I talked about this movie forever, it just means me gushing about how much like
Wait, well,
how much I like to
one.
look about it. Yeah.
Gush about your number one. Yeah, it's such a unique, memorable film. Yeah, like you say, the art style plays such a huge role in that, which again, for an animated film,
it's exactly what you want. Yeah, if you have an animated film, the animation looks bad, you're already not going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Weird that Sony Animated Pictures come up with this and the Emoji Movie. What's up with that? What's going on there?
Two classics. That's crazy, isn't it? They've got two. My number one, I can now reveal, is Theatre Camp. I was trying so hard not to scream and shout when you mentioned this in your honourable mention. I just love this movie so much. It's like a perfect comedy. It's a perfect film for me. Mockumentary is like my favourite genre, my favourite way to deliver comedy. I've loved mockumentary like my whole life, you know, The Office, all the way from like Ricky Gervais's to The American, Parks and Rec, Modern Family. I love all that shit. This just does it so well. I've never been to a theatre camp, but I've done summer camps when I was younger, and I've done improv classes and things like that. So I sort of relate to a lot of the stuff that goes on. I think all the performances are brilliant. Molly Gordon and Ben Platt, like you say. And Ayo Edebiri, who was in Bottoms as well, plays the character that shows up without a CV. With a fake CV or whatever. Jimmy Tatro is always fun to see. We love him in American Vandal. Like, everyone in this is like one of my favorite comedian actor people. It's just, the ensemble cast is so good, and all the like performances from the kids as well, I think, are brilliant, and it just nails the vibe of those sort of camps.
It's got like the whole like millennial humor thing down. I think.
Literally.
Like, it's very much made for our kind of generation.
Yeah, it and Bottoms in my head are very equated, and that's why they're sort of both high up on the list. Is that it's that similar type of comedy. The ending is like kind of emotional as well, like the final song in the musical. And I think it's great that it builds up to this musical, and it does end on the musical number in the same way that like their play also ends on the musical number. Every joke lands, every note is hit. And it's a perfect film.
I think there's movies on my list that I think were better, but Theatre Camp is one I would go back and watch before. I would sooner go back and watch them than some of the others.
I think that's a big part of it for me, is I want to watch this again. I've already seen it twice. I want to watch it again. Like, it's going to be one of my favorite films just in general, I think, for a long time. It was number one when I saw it. I came out of it like, that's my favorite film of the year. And it hasn't changed. Nothing's beat it. A lot of my list is very grounded emotional dramas. Yeah. But my number one is Where My True Heart Lies, which is comedy.
A grounded emotional comedy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there we go. That's our favorite films of 2023.
Our favorite films? I think they're still solid lists, considering how much we did miss out on, or like through whatever reason we just missed when it was in cinemas.
You can't watch everything all the time.
Can't watch everything everywhere all at once.
You can't watch that film.
You can't watch it. It's
from a different year.
They've taken it down. They've taken it down. You can't watch it double.
I think it's cool that we agree on like so much film wise, but our lists are so different. Like, our tastes are so different, but
like everything that was like cool on our list, we'd probably say we both liked.
Yeah, we'd both watch each other's films.
We'd both watch them and be like, yeah, like, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just nice to just talk about films you love, man. We'll be back to the jokes in the new year.
I think one thing we can agree on, if we had to pick a film we watched from this year that was the worst, that we would not want to watch again, I think we could both pick exactly what it was.
Should we say it at the same time?
One, two, three. The Haunted Mansion. What were they thinking?
What did they do with that?
I mean, imagine just taking a movie that was already just mid to begin with.
How do you ruin
and
the
making
Haunted
it
Mansion?
somehow making it worse?
What the fuck?
This is a franchise nobody cared about, so
Yeah.
nobody will care if we do a bad job on it.
They didn't even try.
They did
try.
not try. There was so much product placement.
Yeah.
The only saving grace is Danny DeVito.
DeVito's so good in it. We did a commentary on that. If you want to go, I'll link that. But fuck that film.
Fuck that film.
Fuck that film. Thank you for watching HAZMAT, ranking our top 10 films of 2023.
If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see us do more stuff like this in the future, you can support the channel by leaving a like or a comment. Maybe you could tell us what some of your favorite movies were this year. You can also subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be alerted to our more recent uploads. And as always, all of our socials will be listed down in the description.
And join us next time where we star in a really grounded, emotional drama.
And then, big fucking robots come in and we have to save the world. And actually, not the world, just the whole multiverse from imploding in on itself. That's what we want. That's the perfect film. Put them together.
See you next year.
Bye.